I think you guys have crushed it when it comes to outreaching to new audiences. These podcasts, I think that he has killed it. Right? He's going out. He's talking to the Nelk Boys, to Theo Vaughn, and it shows the gender gap's massive. Young men in particular are coming over to Donald Trump in a way that have never been affiliated with any Republican candidate, because I think he outreaches to them. He's talking about key issues to them. Let me kind of throw out what I think is the other issue, though. Obviously, he's done very well with men. Obviously, there's a gender gap. We see it in the polls. I have been watching this issue with big food, is like my friend Alex Clark and Robert Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy call it, right? There's a video that Bobby Kennedy did the other day where he held up 2 bags of cereals and said, this is what, I think it's like Fruit Loops or something, and says, this is what it looks like in Europe. This is what it looks like in the United States. And he shows how many more chemicals and additives and processed foods are allowed in our food, not his. But at the end of the video, and he goes through this thing about big food and how we're getting poisoned in America and our government's allowing it to do it. He ends this video by saying, do you realize only 13 chemicals have been banned in recent years, and they were all banned under Donald Trump? I believe that Donald Trump's record on protecting kids and families from big food is a sleeper issue that could resonate with women and moms throughout this country, especially suburban ones in key areas. I'm just telling you, that's my free advice. I really do believe that this issue about what's going on is starting to percolate below the radar, but is a huge winner because so many parents are concerned about what's going into their kids' food, their own food, but obviously their kids as well.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right about that, Sean, and I'm glad you've tapped into that. And this is the whole thing that RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard has been involved in a lot of the surrogates. Yep. The two of them have just been fantastic. Really the wonder twins of Democrats turned Trump surrogates.
Unsung heroes. Really those are. Yeah. I'm telling you, those are your unsung heroes, man.
And it's been what RFK's been talking about has been branded under the MAHA, I guess is how you would pronounce it, but it's Make America Healthy Again. And so he has been talking about a lot of that, the traveling RFK Jr. show where he's going to market after market in the key states, in the battleground states, as well as Tulsi Gabbard. And the two of them have just been fantastic. And I think they are flying, as far as the national media coverage goes, they are flying very much under the radar. You're not going to see stories about them on NBC Nightly News that RFK Jr. was out in, let's say somewhere in Wisconsin on Wednesday night, if he would happen to be, but you're not going to get coverage on the network news about that. But he's out there, he's getting local coverage, and that's a secret weapon that we've got. And not so secret, we're talking about it here, but it doesn't raise to the level of the national news media consciousness on a daily basis, but it does get into local media markets, which is something that we pay great attention to here. Later today, I'm going to do a couple of interviews with local TV stations out and around the country, and that's a way you attack it. You mentioned going after young males and talking about reaching them through podcasts and things. President Trump does that with great enthusiasm. I think he really actually enjoys it. I mean, if you watch,
I think those are some of my favorite interviews. I've known the guy for 10 years. I love why he is so much more engaging and brings up. It doesn't sound like a speech, and maybe I've just heard too many of them, but I love listening to these. I hope you guys continue to.
It's totally going to do that. And then by contrast, Harris, Kamala Harris, she knows that she has a problem with young men in voting and not supporting her. And more specifically, surprisingly to some observers, not surprising to us, but surprisingly, she's having a problem attracting the support of young black men. And so she clearly knows that's a problem. So she's off trying to do podcasts now to try to plug a hole there. And she did this one that is hosted by a couple of former NBA players, and it's very California centric. And they were talking a lot. Of course, she's from California. And they talked a lot about, her being from California, and she was pretending to be a basketball fan. And I could tell from listening to her talk that she had no earthly idea what she was talking about. If they had asked her to name one player, I guarantee you she never would have been able to come up with a single player's name. Yeah, right. Tupac, her favorite living rapper.
But, her favorite living rapper.
Right, her favorite living rapper. But they asked her the question that everyone asks her, and so you'd think she'd be ready for this by now, but they asked her again, the times are tough out there. What are you going to do to help people being able to afford groceries and put gas in the car? she's gotten this question everywhere she has gone, and she still can't answer it, Sean. So when she's there trying to reach young black males for doing this specific podcast, and they ask her, what are you going to do to make life affordable? She goes on this long diatribe, this long winding thing about how she grew up. And she almost said, I grew up in the middle class, but she caught herself. You could see it. So they told her to stop saying that. But she's then winding, oh, I grew up above this woman who owned a small business, and it was blah, blah, blah. And she talked about different neighborhoods. That doesn't answer the question.
I know.
The question was, how are you going to make life affordable?
But
I don't care where you grew up.
As a comms, wait. So you're the perfect person to ask this, because as a comms guy, right? I keep saying the same thing. I don't get it. You know the question's going to happen, right? It's like going to an interview. Why do you want this job? What are you going? Right. I mean, like there's 4 questions that you know are coming your way. Do you think that she doesn't want to answer, or she can't? Because as a comms guy, I would say, Madam Vice President, you're going to get asked this question again. The 4 things you should say are, we're going to cut taxes on this. We're going to end up with this regulatory reform. She could have 4 bullet points that get by the question. Okay. Regardless of whether it matters or not, you could have a canned answer. I can't figure out for the life of me whether she doesn't want to answer it because she doesn't believe in her own policies, or she doesn't want to reveal her real answer, which is like, I'm not really good at this, and I'm going to screw it up more. I mean, what is it? Because it's not a hard thing to answer.
It's not, and we know that she can memorize answers because we've seen her do it. That's why she repeats the same things over and over again all the time.
But that's what I don't get. Why not just answer? But if you're her staffer, Tim, and you and I have done this for a living, why not just give her, Madam Vice President, here's 4 things that you could say, A, B, C, D, and then just pivot and you'll get away with it and no problem. She chooses not to do it, and it's got to make me think that she doesn't want us to really know what her real plan is.
Well, that's the obvious thing. If she were to tell the truth, it would be a terrible answer, because the truth is she's going to raise taxes by $5 trillion. She's going to let the Trump tax cuts expire, which means a tax increase on everyone in this country who pays taxes, which is basically most adults, almost all adults. That's the real answer. And the underlying problem, inflation, is something that you could make the argument, the very good, very clear argument, that she is in many ways single-handedly responsible for the inflation, because she cast 2 tie-breaking votes that caused all the trillions of extra spending, which every economist, including Janet Yellen, her own Treasury Secretary, says supercharged inflation. So her real answer is terrible. So her only choice is to talk about her childhood and what street she grew up on or whatever, or to lie. And so those aren't very good choices.
All right. I have one last controversial question to ask you, and then because I know you got a debate to get ready for. You're a baseball guy. The Murtaughs are huge. We lost Pete Rose last night, 83 years old. Should Pete Rose be reinstated so that he can get into the Hall of Fame?
Listen, I don't know. As you know, when you come on these podcasts, when you're doing these shows, and I'm here in my role as spokesman for the Trump campaign, I'm going to punt on that because I don't know what Donald Trump's opinion on Pete Rose is. I will say this about Pete Rose.
Wow.
I will say this about Pete Rose. I did grow up in a baseball family. My grandfather, Danny Murtaugh, who was the manager of the Pirates, was friendly with Pete Rose. They were contemporaries, and there was a period of time back before most people watching this can recall, maybe some do, when baseball, there were no divisions in the 2 leagues. There was the American League and there was the National League, and that was it. You were either in first place or you were an also-ran. And the first place teams in each league, American and National, went to the World Series, and that was that. There was no playoffs. And then in 1969, they split the 2 leagues into 2 divisions each East and West. And for some reason, Pittsburgh got put in the National League East, and Cincinnati was moved to the National League West. And that was at the time leading into the Big Red Machine, which was the great Cincinnati Reds teams of the mid-'70s, with Johnny Bench and Tony Perez and George Foster and Dave Concepcion and Pete Rose, and just fantastic teams. And my grandfather he famously was quoted in Pittsburgh, I don't know who it was that decided that Cincinnati was in the West, but I'd like to shake his hand. Because they put the Reds in the other division, and the Pirates wouldn't have to meet them until playoff time. So Pete Rose, absolutely one of the greatest players who ever lived, the all-time hit leader. And I'm not going to get into any of the other controversies.
You're such a pro. I mean, look, this is why you're good at what you do. But I honestly, like, I have my opinion, but you're a baseball guy, and I The one thing I will say is I'm glad you told that story, because everything that I've heard about Pete Rose from people who played with him or interact with him, regardless of what you think about what he did post game, in terms of the the cheating and the betting and all that kind of stuff, is that everybody said that he was a good guy, like they liked being around him, and that he was nice to them and kind to them. And I think that's good to know. We all have issues, but I think that anyway. So
I think he was a great teammate. I think people. I saw a clip from him the other day where he just never be satisfied. That's the way he played the game. Be aggressive and never be satisfied.
I like that.
And that's how he played. He was fun.
Then I'll leave it there. I didn't mean I was joking. I didn't really think it would be that controversial, but you're a pro.
People have strong opinions about the Hall of Fame question. I know that's what you were asking.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.